You are listening to the Queens of Quality podcast. This podcast will discuss some of the basic and not so basic impacts of compliance and quality within the pharmaceutical and biotech industries. We have a balance of laughter and education as we discuss the misconceptions about quality assurance within an organization. We are your hosts, Jen and Michelleanne. Let's get ready to start the show. Welcome back to Queens of Quality. So we are back with Jen. Welcome back, Jen.
Hi, Michelleanne.
Hi, Jen. And we are back with Steve Thompson to talk more about AI in clinical trials and life sciences in general, not just clinical trials. But this is where we're starting.
I'm excited to be back. Thank you both. And I'm sorry I missed the last episode. It could not be helped. We'll just leave it there.
It's earth-shattering. You missed it, but you're here now, and it's exciting. And let's get going. Michelle, we did the teaser before, and it's probably hopefully driving people crazy on what we're talking about. So you want to spill the beans?
So what we're talking about doing is the development of an algorithm review board, because we need that ethical tie-in for the use of AI in life sciences.
So you guys did a great episode last time. One of the things that I thought was really interesting was it sparked all these thoughts for me in terms of the historical context in which all of this is actually happening. So we are actually living what will be considered history type of thing. The evolution has just gone so fast. The technology is new, but not really. And it's really just how we're using it. All of those things are kind of key messages that I heard you all say in the last episode. Is there anything else that you want to add into that? Because again, this is just as we talk about getting out of the bias business, these are my biases and the things that really kind of resonated with me. So I don't know if there's anything else maybe that you wanted to highlight that I may have necessarily overlooked in my bias.
No, I think it's really good that you shared that with us, to be a listener, part of this big thing, but also to be a listener and to hear what was absorbed. But yeah, and it's exactly what we talked about. And what happened was, Michelleanne, you provided that article about the synthetic patient, which was fascinating. And it sounds good. Oh, a synthetic patient, we can do that. Not so much study on humans. Maybe don't worry about animal studies. It sounds really good in theory. But what does it mean? And in our previous podcast, we were talking about the concerns that we have. And it's not just a synthetic patient, as an example, it's synthetic patients, plural, because it takes a whole group of people. And we have to protect the people that are involved in whatever trial or application of the technology and everything. We have to protect the folks there. So that was like a gist of the conversation. And there's a hunger right now. There's an excitement to jump on board to use the technology. Right. But let's be realistic. We don't really know what we have. We don't really know how to use it. We're all trying to figure out this thing that's moving at light speed down this train track that we're all on board trying to assemble as we're going down here. Right. It's kind of scary and fun. It's a fun ride, but is it going to crash type of a thing, right? So that's where we're at.
Now, and Steve, I love what you were just saying about we're excited. We want to use it. We want to actually apply the tools that we have today. Like, how amazing is this? And there's a lot of history we can learn from.
Right.
I had been trying to think of this quote and I looked it up because I have a Googly box. The quote from Jurassic Park by Jeff Goldblum: your scientists were preoccupied with whether or not they could. They didn't stop to think if they should.
Right.
Brilliant.
And so we need to make sure that those steps are in place, because we're not looking to set the T-Rex loose.
Exactly. Right.
Or
and I love that, Michelleanne. It's that whole idea of like, just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. And we're going to come back to, we have a lot of historical context. I don't need to list the multitude. It's not just one or two. We have lots of different examples where human beings were not kind to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how
every
Right,
day.
exactly. This is how GCPs were created. That's why GCP got created. That's why you have good clinical practice for those who aren't necessarily in the industry. That's why you have good manufacturing practices. All the other GXPs, that's how they were all born out of. Human beings made mistakes. I'm just going to use that really basic general term. We can talk about the degrees of those mistakes in a different podcast.
Right.
It was, I'll go with less than ideal in terms of how the studies were done. That being said, we now have the opportunity to use history as our guide. Sometimes the best ideas are what not to do. So that then brings, okay, what should we do?
Mm-hmm.
And Steve, I know we were talking about this before we actually started to record the podcast in terms of there's a history here and there's actually somewhat of a template already there for us. We've taken the learnings. There is the institutional review boards or the independent review boards, depending on who you talk to. That construct is already the concept and how they've constructed it is already available to us. So why not leverage that?
And in some areas, they're actually called ethics committees.
Right.
So it's
Yeah,
IRBs and ECs.
Right.
So
And
which is exactly what they do. Why not call it what it is?
because we can't be trusted. We were earlier talking, and I know, Jennifer, you got some interesting information about the IRB and how that came about. And that's how we thought of all this, right? The ARB is the extension of an IRB, but it's dedicated to basically algorithms because of the advancement of AI and then the explosion of generative AI, where everybody's talking about it now, and the fear that people are going to run too fast before they know how to walk, ethics not being able to keep up with technology. So the whole purpose is for us to brainstorm about this idea that's a great opportunity for people to get involved now, all different types of people, mathematicians, biostatisticians, data scientists, life science, chemists, biology, ethicists, all these different types of people coming together to operate on the algorithm review board, ARB, so that we are going to apply technology properly, ethically, so that we can keep moving forward and not create a catastrophe that will force government agencies to create laws which will throttle our ability to move forward. We want to do it right from the start. And the ARB seems like a good way of doing that. And I'm going to use Michelleanne's term, and I'm going to go to my Googly box and look up the definition of IRB, and I'll just read it and then we can go from there. Because if you're not familiar with the IRB, it's an institutional review board. And this is from hhs.gov, not Wikipedia. So maybe it has a little bit more weight. I don't know. Institutional review boards, or IRBs, review research studies to ensure that they comply with applicable regulations, meet commonly accepted ethical standards, follow institutional policies, and adequately protect research participants. I know, Jennifer, you were talking about like the IRB and formation of it, and I think it was fascinating how you were sharing how that all came about.
Right. And thank you for reading that, Steve, because again, I think that provides the appropriate context for everyone who's listening, because those review boards, they already have a variety of specialties. That's what, again, a lot of the institutions, a lot of the ethics committees, you are required to provide a certain amount of expertise and medical data. You have independent people who have nothing to do with the institution that you're talking with, that kind of thing. They have a very strict requirement to be diverse in people's expertise.
Absolutely.
And to have this, as you called it earlier, the ARB, that's where, again, having this kind of a construct and leveraging what's already there, it's familiar for everyone. And it makes sense because we're already doing it, just not as focused.
And again, just to set the tone right, we don't have the answers. We are brainstorming right now, and we want you, the audience, to get involved, to engage with us, because there's so much opportunity here that we want to cast this wide net, figure out what we can do that will really be helpful, and then we'll start shaping and focusing the ARB based upon priority, need, or whatever the case may be. But right now, it's like, what is this? Well, there's so many opportunities. The FDA has already approved AI and algorithms for many different things. We could take a look at those things. And is that appropriate? Are there concerns? So there's already work. The problem is that everybody is going 1,000 miles an hour in all different directions, and nobody is collaborating and comparing notes to find out. So again, it's wide open. It's exciting. We can create this thing together. We can't do us three can't do it ourselves. We need experts in different areas and non-experts, whatever the case may be, to help form this ARB, which seems to be a big need.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I would really like to add here is this is a common running theme, right? That we're not collaborating. We talk about siloing within organizations. We talk about a lot of this, and we will go much farther together if we are working
Mhm.
together on this.
And wouldn't it be good, like, let's say if I dust off my programming skills and I go out there and I create an algorithm. Okay, I can do something, but I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical person, right? I'm a tech person. And I'll never, I mean, a segue, I'll never forget, I was doing a risk assessment on patient safety once. And it occurred to me, why am I doing a risk assessment on patient safety? I'm not even a medical doctor. I'm a tech person. And so in that sphere, we created matrices with the chief medical officer that said, what is a catastrophe, moderate, minor, and whatever. And they created the matrix. But it took a medical doctor to figure out really what is catastrophic or not. And that's what we need. We need to figure out, okay, what can I contribute to it? But if I'm just a tech person creating these algorithms, I'm worried that I may do something wrong because I'm not a doctor, right? But if I had the ARB, I can develop this thing and I can share it with the ARB, and this multidisciplinary team, this review board, can look at the technology, the mathematics, the biology, the chemistry, the psychology, whatever comes into play that this algorithm is trying to work on. All of these things can come together, and I get feedback from the ARB. It's like, no, your data is biased, or you're using a supervised algorithm when you should be using unsupervised, or whatever the case may be. But it would help me out, or even better yet, before I even start doing that, I could come to the ARB with the idea and get some guidance to be pointed in the right direction. Just the thought.
I love your thoughts. And the self-awareness to say, "Hey, am I really the right person to do this?" makes me like you even more. Because that's why again, that awareness, I Michelleanne and I know she knows me way too well, and she knows I talk in bumper stickers. So for a grammar aside, so I apologize to all of my English majors out there. This is a quintessential example that we are smarter than me.
Yep,
Like the collective has more information, more knowledge, more experience than I do. And Mishlan, you mentioned the silos. I know we've talked about breaking down silos in several of our podcasts. And this is again one of those, I was going to say a quintessential example, but I think it's even beyond that. I feel like this is one of those seminal moments. Like I said, we were actually experiencing history.
Mm,
Now I'm getting philosophical here as we're talking about this. This is one of those seminal moments. Either we do it together or we're going to do it apart, and it's going to start to build those walls instead of actually building the foundation.
exactly right.
Yep.
Exactly.
And so I feel like we need to address a couple of historical milestones that we need to account for and never do again.
How
So
far
what
back do
Steve,
you want to go?
Beginning of time.
this isn't confession. We don't have that kind of time.
Just checking.
Um, but
the IRB piece came out of in direct response to.
Tuskegee.
And so
Yep.
we need to address those pieces because
Right.
that's another piece that is included. I said before we started recording, I'm working on an IND submission to the agency and an IND briefing package. And in the tagline of the FDA right now, when you talk about this, the response that you get is one of the things that they're looking for is diverse population in clinical trial. We touched on that in the last episode also because everybody reacts differently to stuff, right? This is
Right.
not, we're not doing individualized medicine. We're doing medicine for as much of the population that can be reached. So we need to make sure that is represented.
Right.
And in order to do that, people have to want to come and be a part of the clinical trials. And for several populations, that is a very tough sell.
Right. Yeah. I
because
know
of the
that.
past.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that the First Nation peoples, and
Yeah.
again, there's a level of trust that you mentioned the First Nations people as well as the African American community. It's been, I don't think destroyed is too heavy of a word here.
No. Mm-mm.
These are things that so we would need to build that up. And the way to
Mm.
build that up is again to remove bias.
Mhm.
Inclusion in the algorithm and diverse clinical trials and that type of thing, as you mentioned, Michelleanne, with the algorithms that are utilized so that, again, the information is coupled together so that any sort of bias is removed, so that we are actually treating the human beings,
And I don't know that
all of
we
the
can
human
remove
beings.
all of the biases, but we can
True.
certainly cut down a great deal
Right.
by
Yeah.
making sure that we have a diverse group look at the algorithm.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
And
people from different backgrounds, because as
Mhm.
we also discussed during COVID, AI was used a lot for facial recognition for students in university classes. And the algorithms were built, the facial recognition software was built only using white people. And so people of color were systematically marked not able to take their exams
Hmm.
because they weren't part of the development of the algorithm. So we need to make sure that happens. And we see that a lot.
And if it like, so if I developed something, let's say I developed some system that was based upon AI with an algorithm and it's just me,
Yeah.
people don't know me. Who's going to trust me? And I'm doing something. But if there was a group of people where representation for their group is in the ARB, so they know that people who understand them, their culture, their environment, their genetics, their whatever the case may be, people who understand them have a seat at the table and a voice to make sure that it's not going off the rails. And then when you were talking earlier, another thing hit: targeted human therapeutics, guided human therapeutics, right? So we want to look at genetics and target based upon your DNA that this is going to work for you versus the way we do clinical trials now, phase 1, 2, 3, huge populations of all of these people. And we look for statistical significance if it's safe and effective. So as we start going into guided or targeted human therapeutics, it sounds really good. But as you're mentioning what we've done in the past against human beings, when you were talking about this, it kind of scared me. It's like, wow, not only is it just the algorithms and stuff, but the advancements of technology to target based upon genetic sequences. It's like, this is done right.
It's
It's
huge.
great. Done wrong. It's a disaster.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring it back in to what can we do as to make sure that the ARBs that we're developing because we know that this is the direction that we're heading. What can we do to ensure that we are addressing these things? And it's very much like we talked about with risk management, which is one of Jen's sweet spots too. We are such geeks, I swear. It's so awesome.
I like
Um,
it.
It.
but
I feel like a queen of comedy or queen of quality.
Gotta
what we're
keep it light.
what we're looking to do is to be preventative in this. Like, we want to be able to predict where the fires are going to be and get
Mhm.
them out before they're lit. Some people call it overthinking. We call it appropriate risk management.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Eh,
how do we get started? I mean, it's so exciting that it's wide open, right? I
Right.
mean, I know Jennifer, ethics and stuff is your background. Pharmacovigilance safety, right? So even our little group here of three, I
Yep.
don't know if we're the Three Musketeers or the Three Stooges or whatever, but anyway, there's three of us. So exciting that it's wide open and we really want to get people involved, like Jennifer, like you said, the we versus me type of thing. And so let's make it happen.
Right. And I mean, Steve, I totally agree with you. Like, we need to, okay, now what's next? And Michelleanne, you started to actually get into what I would call the philosophical foundation of the ARB. Before we can even get there, though, we need others to participate.
Mhm.
And that's where we come back to the ask of our listeners. And Steve, you were so passionately articulated it earlier. We need them.
Yeah.
We need them to participate in this because we are very much smarter than me. We need not, and it's going to be smarter and better than just the three of us.
Mhm.
You know, this is something that really is necessary. So that's where we do want the input from our listeners and people within the industry, even people outside of the industry.
Absolutely.
We don't have I had a manager at one point where she said, I do not have I just lost the word again. Basically, I don't own good ideas.
Right.
So, like, we need to bring those ideas to the table as to how this can actually work.
Yep.
And so that's why I will keep bringing it back to previous podcasts, right,
Uh-huh.
where we've talked about that's why it's important to have everybody represented at the table from the beginning, because I sent a proposal out to the internal team to be reviewed. And Michelle, our CFO, came back and said, what about XYZ things? And I was like, oh, yeah, look at that. Never even
Yeah.
thought of it.
Yeah. Perfect example. So how can people, they're listening, right? Hopefully they're listening. How can they engage with us?
So reach out we always have included our general email address of hello@metisconsultingservices.com. I'm Michelleanne Bradley. We have Jennifer DeMarco and Steve Thompson. All of us are available on LinkedIn. Drop us a line, send us a smoke signal. We want to work with you.
Whatever.
We want all of us to be represented at this table. We need all of us.
Yeah. And I think, Jennifer, I can't remember, one of you mentioned earlier that even outside of the industry, and I think in our life sciences industry, we do ourselves a disservice by reinventing the wheel. For example, computer systems validation, which all these tech companies not in life sciences knows how to test and software, and we've created our own thing that nobody understands through Part 11. So we shot ourselves in the foot because we can't attract technical talent because a lot of the things don't make sense to them and they have to learn this new nomenclature and lingo, blah, blah, blah. So we should be inclusive in this and leverage the expertise of other industries as well, not reinvent the wheel to make it something esoteric and non-understandable unless you're 20 years in life sciences.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Yes. Let's do it. Yes. So I think you've already kind of done our close in terms of really making
Right.
sure that
So
people know how to get a hold of us. And Steve, we're excited to have you as a guest. Thank you for not just one, but two,
absolutely.
Totally. Fun.
maybe more. Not
Yeah.
that I'm selfish.
See-
'Cause, yeah, I am.
So the way I have this set up actually is that we're doing 4 episodes as a season 2.5. And the plan is for Steve to be here for all 4.
Perfect.
So we have 2 more episodes of this series. And so please reach out to us. Let us know what you think, where you want to see this go. And reach out to us at hello@metasconsultingservices.com. Steve Thompson, available on LinkedIn. Michelleanne Bradley, available on LinkedIn. Jennifer DeMarco, available on LinkedIn. Thank you so very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Queens of Quality podcast. To continue the conversation, please follow our LinkedIn profile, Metis Consulting Services, or for additional resources, visit our website at metisconsultingservices.com. You can listen to the show free anywhere you find podcasts. Love the show? Don't forget to subscribe, like, review, and share with others. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you next time.